Here on Live Now from Fox, we do see people stepping to a microphone outside of the Boulder County Courthouse after Mohamed Soliman appeared in court today, the terror bombing suspect. Let's listen in to this on Live Now.
Dougherty is Michael Dougherty, and Stephen Redfern is Stephenredfearn. This is a brief update, and we'll answer only a few questions after we're done.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Dougherty. I'm the district attorney. I appreciate you being here today. I will say that this horrific attack took place just a few days ago. It was a beautiful Sunday here in Boulder, and not so far from the Justice Center over on Pearl Street, there was a peaceful walk and gathering that was absolutely destroyed and devastated by an act of terror, hate, and anti-Semitism. Are you okay?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. And it's only a few days later, but the police chief and I wanted to give you a summary of where we are since then, as well as touch on the court appearance that just happened. And anytime there's a court appearance, I'm always willing to come out and talk to you after the court appearance and answer whatever questions I can. So I'll do that in a moment, but I'm going to turn it over to Chief Redfern first to give you a quick summary and overview of where we are with the law enforcement investigation. Then I'll come back and talk about the charges that were just filed in court, and we're happy to take any questions you have. So thank you again for being here. Chief?
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon. Again, my name's Stephen Redfern. I serve as the police chief here in Boulder. A few updates briefly from the Boulder PD side of things, the law enforcement investigation. So since this attack on Sunday, from the early moments, and I'm going to give you a timeline in a minute, when the suspect surrendered and was taken into custody, we knew that we would now have to prepare this case to get ready for prosecution, to turn over to, in this case, the district attorney's office as well as the U.S. attorney's office for the next phase in this criminal justice process, and that's what we've been doing. I can tell you since Sunday night, when I left at midnight, our detectives were still working, and they've been working around the clock in partnership and collaboration with the FBI since. This case is in a very good point, and it's been an incredible endeavor by everyone involved to get this case to the point where the district attorney will give you a few more updates on what's next in the court process. So the investigation is not over. We're still investigating. We're still talking to involved people. And I will just say that it's still possible there's witnesses out there or even victims we haven't spoken to, and we encourage them to reach out if you were there, saw something, and have not been interviewed. That is still an evolving process. Some questions have come up throughout this week for the last few days since the attack on a timeline. And so we have been working to get a good timeline out there so we're very clear to the public on both the police response as well as the fire response. And I wanted to just briefly share a few of the initial moments from the initial response. So according to our CAD, our computer-aided dispatch, as well as body cameras and GPS, we know the call came into our dispatch center at 1:26 p.m. The call was entered into the system and dispatched about 50 seconds later at 1:27 p.m. Our first Boulder police officer was on scene about 4 minutes later at 1:30 p.m. and he had the suspect in custody about 1:31 p.m. The suspect was taken into custody. The first arriving officer at 1:30, we had a second officer arrive about 27 seconds later, so we had two officers on scene within about 4 minutes. The third officer and a supervisor, a sergeant, arrived at 1:34 p.m., and the suspect, again, approximately 5 minutes from the initial 911 call, was in custody. We were lucky with our fire rescue partners and AMR. The first three fire units on scene were paramedic fire engines equipped with a paramedic that were able to immediately begin to render aid to victims. Fire also received the call and dispatched at 1:27 p.m. along with police as well as American Medical Response. The first arriving fire unit was a battalion chief, arrived at 1:31 p.m. and at that time they requested 5 ambulances to the scene. At 1:32 p.m., air medical transports, air choppers, medical choppers were requested. The first fire engine with the paramedic arrived at 1:32. The first ambulance arrived at 1:33. And additional fire engines with paramedics arrived at 1:35 and 1:36. That is the timeline, and I will say the first air ambulance arrived in 6 minutes, so very quick response as well. And so that's the timeline. I wanted to be clear on that because there have been some different versions of that timeline, but to the best of our knowledge today, that's what we're dealing with. For us as the police department and the city, moving forward right now, our focus is on maintaining safety in the community as events are taking place. Obviously on Sunday, we have a large event downtown, and you will see a large police presence. You will see our partner agencies. You will see us there ready to protect that event, to ensure that people can grieve and recover from this attack safely and peacefully. And so we are continuing to work very diligently to prepare for that. I thank our partners in advance that are coming into town to do that. And we will continue to ask the public's help to see something, if they see something, to say something up to and including during that event. We need all eyes and ears out there to help us look for things that may not be right and let us know so we can address them. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to the district attorney before some questions.
So I want to emphasize, we're obviously in the very early stages of the investigation and prosecution. The attack happened on Sunday afternoon, and we're here together outside the Justice Center on Thursday afternoon. But I am, as district attorney, very grateful for the incredibly strong response by law enforcement, including the Boulder Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation and their law enforcement partners, as well as the strong working relationship between my office, the district attorney's office, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's how it should be. But I can tell you, having worked in different places, that's not always the case. So I served at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for 13 years. Shortly after moving to Colorado, I was put in charge of the entire criminal section for the Attorney General's office, and I've been a prosecutor for my entire career. And the strong working relationships we have here are really important, and to me, exactly what we need at a time of crisis and a time of challenge. So those relationships have been what we've been relying upon since Sunday, and getting the work done and doing everything we can to collect the evidence, interview the people who need to be spoken with, and also support the victims. And that process is still just getting underway. As you know, the U.S. Attorney's Office will be filing federal charges against the defendant. And from the U.S. Attorney's Office, we're aware that that's going to be a hate crime charge. My office, the District Attorney's Office at the state level, will be filing attempted murder and related counts. I will share with you that the District Attorney's Office today filed our complaint and information, which is a publicly available document. I'll touch on it, though, briefly, and then happy to answer any questions you have as well. The complaint and information was filed today, as today was the formal filing of charges in the case. The defendant just appeared in the courtroom at the jail, and the complaint and information contains 62 counts as to crimes committed against the victims and 118 counts total. So I'll touch on that briefly. The 62 counts include attempted murder counts, so attempted murder in the first degree under two different theories. Basically, attempted murder or murder can be charged in two different ways. One is with intent, and the other is with extreme indifference. The basic definition of that means to act with universal malice that creates grave risk of death to others. So each one of the attempted murder victims has two attempted murder counts filed in connection with them. We also have assault in the first degree counts. For any victim 70 or older in the state of Colorado, that person's an at-risk victim. So that assault in the first degree count is raised a level from a class 3 felony to a class 2 felony. There's 2 counts of use of an incendiary device, and then a number of counts for attempted use of incendiary devices, as well as an assault in the third degree count and an animal cruelty count for the dog who was injured in connection with the attack. So we have 15 victims plus the dog for a total of 16 victims in connection with the charges filed in the complaint. The ages of the victims range from 25 to 88 years old. There are 8 female victims, 8 women, and 7 men who are victims here. The 118 counts, the easiest way to explain it is for crimes that are classified as a crime of violence in Colorado, we need to add a count explaining that it's a crime of violence. So when you look at the complaint and information, there are 62 counts that pertain to victims, and the rest of the counts up to and including 118 are crimes of violence designations for the 1 through 62 that are classified as crimes of violence, if that makes sense. We met with many of the victims here earlier today. along with the FBI, Boulder Police Department, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. We have been in contact with other victims, and 3 victims remain in the hospital at this time. Going forward, part of our work will be to support the victims as much as we can. And I truly appreciate the outpouring of support and love from this community for the victims. We were at the vigil at the Boulder Jewish Community Center last night. And by we, I mean representatives from my office, including myself, but also Boulder Police Department, U.S. Attorney's Office, FBI, a host of elected officials and others. But the point of this is really to say it was an incredible gathering from my perspective. It was very powerful. And a lot of support for the victims is coming from this community. And although this prosecution is going to be laser focused on the defendant and the responsibility that we have, I encourage all of us to continue to lift up the victims and support them and their loved ones and the Jewish community in response to this crime. The Chief mentioned something I just want to touch on. We have a lot of community events coming up. It's June, so we have the Boulder Jewish Festival, first and foremost. I want to mention that, given the nature of what happened on Sunday. But we also have Pride Fest. We have Juneteenth. We have a host of other celebrations. This is a time to come together as a community and do what Boulder County has done in the past when we face tragedy, challenge, and crisis, which is lift one another up. Support one another and hold your loved ones close and be a positive force to those around you. I can't emphasize enough how proud I am to be a member of this community and to be district attorney. So it's with hope and confidence that I say, let us come to these events together if we wish and do our very best to support one another. We've done it in response to fires, to floods, and to mass attack. And now we're being called upon to do it again, to demonstrate resilience and strength. And that is exactly what I saw at the Boulder Jewish Community Center last night. And this is just my saying to the community, we need to do that again. For the victims in this case, for their families, for the members of the Jewish community, and for all the members of this great state, that we stand together at a time where it's really needed, a time of crisis and a time of pain and trauma. To the media, I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate the work you do. And I will make myself available to the extent I can after every court appearance, just to answer questions that you have about what happened in court. I will remind you that as prosecutors and law enforcement, there are constraints on us as to what we could say during a pending case. You know that, but I want community members to know that too. Where we have ethical limits on what we could say. The reason for that is a good one. It's a valid one, which is the defendant's entitled to a fair trial in Boulder County and at the federal level, and we need to make sure that happens. We need to respect his constitutional rights and honor his rights and ensure we can have a fair trial here in Boulder County. So I'll always make sure that I follow the ethical guidelines and legal requirements for district attorneys in pending cases, and I know the police chief and other members of law enforcement will do the same. As you heard from the judge who presided over today's proceeding, the case at the state level is next set for the afternoon of July 15th for a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is conducted in order for the court to make a determination of whether the prosecution has enough evidence to move forward. So we'll be calling witnesses to testify on the afternoon of July 15th. That'll be here in this building at the Justice Center. And I want to stress, of course, the defendant's innocent unless and until proven guilty. I cannot emphasize that enough. And the charges are merely allegations. And every time I meet with the media, I will say that. So I want to respect the defendant's rights and make sure he gets a fair trial. I'm happy to stop here, and Chief Redfern and I could take any questions that you have. Yes, ma'am.
For you, could you please just walk us through this case carrying those 118 separate charges? What message you're hoping these charges send to the public about the scale of this attack?
So I'm not going to talk about it in terms of a message, although I appreciate the question. What I will say is the charges reflect the evidence that we have regarding this horrific attack that took place and the seriousness of it. So the defendant's charged with attempted murder in the first degree as to 14 different victims. Each one of those counts carries a sentence of 16 to 48 years. If the defendant's convicted and those counts run or those sentences run consecutive, that would be 48 years in state prison for each of the 14 victims, which comes to 672 years. That's not including the assault charges or the use of an incendiary device or the other assault charge. So I think the charges speak to the seriousness of it. Yes, ma'am.
We've heard from the family's attorney that because the asylum case was pending, they may have been in the country legally. Can you speak to that?
I couldn't hear the last part of what you said. I'm sorry.
We've heard from the defendant's family's attorney that because their asylum case was pending, they may have actually been in the country legally. legally. Can you speak to that?
So the question is about the family status in the country and whether they were here legally or not. I'm not directly involved in that at all. I was aware of what you just referenced from reading the paper this morning. That's how I found out about what the attorney was saying on it. And other than that, I don't have any direct information. We, as a district attorney's office, are not involved in that, so I don't have the details as yet. I imagine I'll be getting them very soon, and then I'm happy to share whatever I learn. Thank you. Colleen?
And then on the family, are you investigating whether they knew about what was going to happen and whether or not they helped the suspect?
So the question is whether the investigation will include what the family knew and whether they helped the suspect or not. What I'll say in response to that is the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Boulder Police Department moved very quickly to start interviewing any witnesses who have any information about this attack, and that investigation's ongoing.
What the same? Are you guys planning to prosecute the family?
So the question is whether we're going to prosecute the family or not. If we learn that people had knowledge, information, if they aided, assisted, or encouraged the defendant to engage in this act, we will certainly look at the possibility of criminal charges. At this point, I have no information to share on that. Yes, sir.
How could a pending deportation case impact the local charges of this?
So the question is, how could a pending deportation case impact the charges on this? What I will say is I am absolutely committed to making sure the defendant's fully prosecuted. So obviously making sure he remains in the country is a top priority so that he can be fully prosecuted and held fully responsible. And I know the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Boulder Police Department, not to speak for them, but I think we're all equally committed to that goal. And then beyond that, obviously we want to make sure we've interviewed every witness and accounted for every piece of evidence, so that effort's underway.
Were all the 15 victims and the dog physically hurt, or was it like they could have been hurt? Can you kind of explain that? Or...
Sure. So the question is, was everybody who's accounted for in the complaint and information physically hurt in terms of suffered actual physical injuries? And the answer is no. And you'll see in the complaint and information, some of these are attempted assault charges. And for the ones that are attempted assault, it means the person did not suffer physical injuries. But obviously there are criminal charges being filed given where the attack took place and where they were positioned during the attack. And we have time for one more question, I'm told. Yes?
Given that it really hasn't been long since the King Soopers trial wrapped up, what's the mood in your office?
So given that it has not been long since the King Soopers trial wrapped up, what's the mood in our office? I will say I'm incredibly fortunate to work with an outstanding team in this district attorney's office. This is the work we're here to do. Obviously, you'd like to have less of it because it would mean fewer people were getting hurt and fewer people were being harmed. But we have a great team, and I would say the mood in the office, to sum it up, is determined. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it, and I hope all of you take care, okay?
Chief,
Thanks.
do you have time for one? Sure. Could you just talk briefly about Sunday without going into logistics, just to put folks at ease who are attending? What are you planning? You mentioned bringing in some outside resources, but what are you planning in terms of security at that event?
Sure. So the question relates, I believe, to the Jewish festival on Sunday that was already planned before the terrorist attack. I'm not going to get into specifics, but what people can expect coming there is enhanced security protocols, a very visible law enforcement presence. We are bringing in SWAT elements. We will have drones. We will have a lot of people there. No secret as well, we'll likely have plainclothes people in the crowd as well. And so we want people to feel safe. We want people to feel at ease. And right now, the best way we can do that is ensure that we have a large number of officers there to be ready to respond to anything. But more so for me, any would-be attacker, anybody that might come there to cause harm, I want them to see that we have a lot of people there, and hopefully that dissuades anyone from doing anything nefarious. So, thank you.
All right, those will be all the questions that we're taking for today.
All right, just listening in there to different members, including the police chief and also the district attorney in Colorado, in Boulder, after the court appearance of Mohamed Soliman inside of that courthouse. Of course, facing some 118 counts, different counts of attempted murder, along with animal abuse and others. We also see him stepping up, back up, Michael Doherty. Let's just listen back in briefly.
Here today, along with two of the other victims. So thank you very much and take care.
All right, now wrapping officially up those comments from Michael Dougherty outside of the Boulder County Courthouse, of course, asking questions about the immigration status of his family as we've been following the last couple days. His wife and 5 children detained by federal immigration authorities. The deportation process happening quickly. A judge blocking that order, that ruling yesterday. So he was asked about the investigation, how that deportation process, whether it goes through or not, impacts this case in Boulder County. Of course, still 118 counts, including attempted murder in several degrees. So he also mentioned the federal case will be in court tomorrow, facing hate crime charges after this anti-Semitic attack on the Pearl Street Mall on Sunday afternoon. They mentioned upcoming here for the next several days. This weekend in Boulder, there will be a Jewish festival, an event there, and the enhanced security taking place in that location. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now from Fox.